So here we are on our journey out into the universe. And we're going to be going off to Delamar and seeking out a mountain which we've decided to name Tanaka Goch. Can explain the reasons behind that later, where that comes from. As we leave here in Port Olisar, interestingly we can see a couple of guys, look like maintenance guys, so we can have a little look at what they're doing. They certainly look pretty serious anyway. So let's just follow them down here. Oh, there they go, going around the corner. Oh yeah, look at that. They are doing some excellent work there, maintaining Port Olisar. Great job, guys. Keep up the good work. Not bad at all. They don't seem to be doing much actually, but they're definitely checking it out, just checking everything's okay, that we're all got nice oxygen to breathe. Good to know. It's being well maintained. Right, so obviously we're going up a mountain, and mountains are dangerous places to go. So we're going to go to the shop.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Good to see you. I'm actually going to be after a Medipen and an Oxypen, because I think these things are sensible things to take with you, just in case they're needed. The actual walk to get to the top of this mountain, well, it's actually a bit of a ridge rather than just a typical pointy mountain. It's not a particularly long walk, but even so shouldn't need these, but even so, definitely worth an Oxypen. You never know when you might fall over and hurt your legs. So we'll take the Medpen, and then we'll also grab hold of an Oxypen. And obviously that can be used to replenish oxygen rapidly. So it's another part of the first aid kit that we need to make sure that we take with us. Always a sensible addition. And we're going to be taking 315p.
Your ship has been delivered to the following
An Origin ship. It's actually one of my favourite little ships actually. I know it's going to be obviously given a rework at some point. It was one of the first ships that they did make at the beginning, and since then they've made so many changes to different ships, and they've made some realisations about how they went around designing it. They realised that sort of designing from the outside in meant that they did compromise somewhat on the internal space, and they didn't think about all the space need for the interior. So this is going to be reworked at some point, but as a concept, great little ship. I've changed the loadout a couple of times as well, put a tarantula on the front for instance, and you know, it can actually sort of hold its own as well. Not bad for a little ship. So here we go, we're going to leave Port Olisar and we're going to head on our way to Delamar. Exciting times to go mountaineering.
Origin jump works at your service. Core system operational. Engines active. Launch complete. Landing gear raised.
So, something about Delamar. Interestingly, it's a moon of Crusader at the moment. But through some science that I don't really truly understand, some weird metaphysics, some strange quantum anomaly, it will actually become an asteroid and move completely to another system. So Delamar is intended to be a settlement that's on an asteroid, so it's an asteroid. It's about the size of a small planetoid, and it's going to be in the Nix system. So this mountain may not be around for a very long time until its actual physical components are remodeled through some strange quantum theory.
Quantum drive engaged.
So that's quite exciting as well. Here we go, going to quantum drive. It's always exciting. Such a great experience going on a quantum drive as we're off to Delamar. So the actual asteroid that's going to be a dwarf planet, or the size of a dwarf planet I should say, is going to be basically hidden deep in somewhere called the Glacium Ring. And the settlement that's on there basically formed by free thinkers during the oppressive Mesa era and remains a hotbed for political radicals. And basically, a lot of those people there are, anti-UEE, or certainly quite paranoid about the powers that UEE have.
Quantum drive disengaged.
So here we are, approaching Delamar. It's actually speeded up because the approach obviously takes quite a reasonable amount of time. Now we can see the large crater there. So the mountain we're actually heading for is the sort of northwest of that crater. So we're gradually edging towards it. Beautiful looking crater, absolutely fantastic. The mountain's coming into view now. So I think what we'll do is we'll just slow it down, back to normal speed, and point it out. There we go. Tanaka Goch. And there it is. And we can see, its arrow's pointing still, which is quite odd, because it's not actually pointing at the right place anymore. But basically we're almost heading for it. So we're going to come down and land. And straight ahead now we can see that little mountain pass that we're going to walk up, go over the back, and then try and start walking up to the peak. That's the intention. This has never actually been done before, so it's all very new. So here we go, on leaving the ship. We're actually walking up such an amazing looking planet surface, and it's like always when you're mountaineering, there is a sense of loneliness, which is actually quite nice, and one of the reasons I think we seek out these kind of expeditions. So here we go. If we turn our head, we can see the mountain pass we're going to go over, and then we can see, more nicely pointed out now, Tanaka Goch. That's the mountain that we intend to climb. So again, we're fast forwarding along here as we go up and around. Super speed. You can see where I was running down the hill. And then you've got to be careful about how fast you actually attempt to take these mountains. Obviously I'm not running that fast, this is on hyper speed, but even at normal speeds, you've got to pace yourself. You don't want to be using up too much oxygen. And when you're climbing up mountains, climbing up hills, you do lose a lot of oxygen. So this is actually my first attempt at this mountain peak. So my idea was to basically go up this pass that we're seeing here, up to the top there, and then go left and along the side of the back of the mountain. That seemed like a quite reasonable approach. As you'll see, it actually turned out to be a little bit more challenging as I would hope it would be. It's lovely the way the cloud effects on this planet are. Absolutely beautiful looking. I said planet, it's a moon, but of course it's a planet that's actually a moon that's actually going to be an asteroid. So here we go, climbing up. This is always one of the nicest things when you're mountaineering, is that as you approach the top of a pass, you know it's going to drop down the other side, and you know you're going to get a view, but you don't really know what the view is. So here we come, and there we go. Nice view over the pass, and we can see we've already actually made some height, which is fantastic. And you can see the strange rock formations that are on Delamar. Some people say they look like hands coming out of the ground, as if there's sort of giant bodies underneath trying to claw their way out of the asteroid or moon or planet. So here we go, we're attempting here to climb up the side of the mountain. This is not an easy thing to do, and you can see there's lots of different steep bits, and really try traversing along it at different angles. That seemed to work, but often what would happen is you would slip down just like I did there, and then you'd sort of try and get back up again and slip a little bit further again. So tried really hard here to actually sort of get up, and just every time I went up I went down again. So it's just a little bit too steep. You can actually see how steep it is when you look down. So I did try this for some time, as you can see here. You can actually see what I believe is Crusader there in the distance as well, which is a lovely view. So this is another technique that works quite well, is to slow down as much as possible and just try and sneak up the mountainside. But unfortunately, like I say, this just proved to be too steep, and I just came to a point where I realised I was going to have to take a different approach. Yeah, you can see how steep it is. That was probably too much to take on. So it's about now that I decide head back to my ship and get a different one. Come back another time, and this time I flew around the back. I just flew over the pass, had a good look around at the mountain. I can see now when looking at it from this side, it's obviously too much of a challenge to climb up the side there. But I can see here, that looks possible, walking up that ridge. So here we are. Basically parked down the bottom of the end of the ridge, and now begin to work my way up. Right, I'm going to read you something now, and I'm going to tell you first of all the reason why I'm going to read this little short piece. It's about somebody called Anthony Tanaka, who was a young boy who lost his life. And on this planet of Delamar, and indeed it will also be in the asteroid, there is the place of Levski, which is an abandoned mine, which is now used as a centre for all sorts of interesting things. But in there is a statue to Anthony Tanaka. And this mountain is named Tanaka Goch. Goch is an old, ancient word meaning ridge. And this mountain, as you'll see as I walk up it, is actually a large ridge. And we'll be walking up to the highest point of that ridge. Hence the word Goch. And Tanaka is named after Anthony Tanaka. So, while you can watch me walking upside the mountain, I'll read a little piece, which is about the painfully short life of Anthony Tanaka. It's a piece of writing. I'm not sure who actually wrote it. I will make sure there's a link to it for those who want to find out a bit more. So basically, over 200 years had passed since Ivan Messer ascended to the role of Prime Citizen, the first phase of his evolution into the first Imperator. Over those centuries, the Messer family tightened their grip on the fountain of power, stripping the Senate of most of their authority and corrupting advocacy into their private police force. The fear of the Tsar and the Vandal, initially used by Messer to consolidate his power, had kept the populace in line and ultimately contributed to their submission. Anthony Tanaka knew none of the history that led to this point in time. Born in the slums of Newcastle on Borea in Magnus, Anthony knew only of a world of checkpoints and government brutality. At the time, Magnus had become a prime manufacturing site for the munitions of the UEE's massive war machine. So the local populace was subjected to ever-increasing scrutiny and random searches to find undesirables and traitors the propaganda dispatches were always warning against. Neighbours and friends would disappear in the middle of the night, and the only official answer to inquiries involved seditious or anarchist activity. Tanaka's parents both worked in the factories and lived under the blanket of fear without question. At the age of 7, Anthony was called to work at the aeroball plant. His parents didn't raise a word of protest. They sank their shoulders and lowered their heads further. Tanaka worked at Airball in the munitions division, his size allowing him to clean out scrubber systems more effectively than adults. For 4 years, Anthony lived in a company barrack with 50 other child employees and worked 6 days a week, with the last day spent in a mandatory learning program studying human history. His wages were virtually non-existent, absorbed by housing, education, and food charges levied by Airball. In 2757, Lane Corpus, the Imperator's distant cousin, was appointed to administer Magnus' system after a noticeable decline in product quality. Corpus had a well-documented vicious streak. The Imperator believed that he could entice the populace populace of the system back to their previous standards. His first order upon touring the facility was to cancel the learning program and force the underage workers to work all week. The conditions around the factory diminished almost uniformly, especially when the Guard, a unit of the advocacy agents assigned as Corpus's personal enforcers, took over security. Shifts were extended by 2, then 4, then 6 hours. Available food was skimmed to the breast of essentials that would prevent workers from collapsing on their machines. The depths of cruelty and indifference eventually managed to unlock something in the downtrodden and defeated workers. They found a limit where they couldn't take any more. On December the 3rd, 2757, on the tail end of a 16-hour shift, Anthony Tanaka's foreman ordered him to pick up shift of a co-worker who went into anaphylactic shock after exposure to a ruptured chemical canister. Anthony refused. This boy of 12 years old, withered rail thin from exhaustion and malnutrition, stood his ground against the foreman. Again and again the boy refused. The foreman had tried to silence the child, but the boy kept refusing. His voice eventually overcame the screech and din of the working factory, attracting the attention of the other workers who watched in silence. The machines slowly stopped until there was just a defiant, sobbing voice of Anthony Tanaka, repeatedly refusing to work any more. A guardsman entered the factory floor. He calmly approached the young boy, took one look at his dirty face, then drew his sidearm. The whole time the workers did nothing. That was the end of Anthony Tanaka. Footage of the feed was smuggled out of the factory and found their way throughout the empire for those bold enough to defy the Imperator. A mood had been growing for quite some time, a desire to burn down the corrupt institution that dominated humanity. Anthony Tanaka became the symbol of that spirit, that humanity's willingness to put up with the cruelty of the messes was coming to an end. It would still take 35 years, but to some, the Messer era began to fall when that shot ended the painfully short life of Anthony Tanaka. And as I approached the top of this mountain and take those last few steps, that's what I was thinking about. Anthony Tanaka, and the price it is sometimes of freedom, and how we should always think about the possibility of our freedom being taken away. That's why I urge you to join our organisation and to make sure you defend life and liberty. Join the UCI. Join the light.